Hello again, everyone. This week's episode is all about that 1920s Rome grater and separating it from the Cletrac crawler undercarriage and removing the pieces from the undercarriage that we need to put on the other K20. Another reason not to throw anything away. This is an old rusty dumbbell bar that I cut the end off of, and this is going to work to make the opposite end of the shaft for the steering for the grater. So all I need to do now is get this end ground down just slightly so that it'll fit into that cavity there. Then we'll get it straight tack welded with the lengths I think I need, and then have the end finished off like this one so we can get a bolt through it. And then we're going to take it to the grater and see if it works. And if it's going to work, we'll go ahead and bring it back and finish welding it all the way around so it's nice and solid. Then we can bolt the steering shaft all back together and see if it's going to work. This is the section of the grater shaft I've been working on. This is the part I did a while back. This is the older section, and here's the piece from that dumbbell bar that I made. Got it ground down and pressed into the tube pretty tightly, and then I ground and flattened these and drilled for that union. The bolts aren't what we're going to use, but it's temporary for now just to make sure it's going to work, and then we'll get grade 8 bolts later. But I'm going to take this to the grater and see if it actually will steer. The piece of the steering shaft that I made fits very well. We don't have all the correct bolts in it yet, but we were just giving it a try, and it does work. I'm going to get Michael up on the grater steering it. I'm going to show you the movement here. Then I'm going to show you the reduction from down below and why it's that way, because it takes that kind of reduction to move something this heavy with just two hands up top. Here you see the steering shaft spinning along with the unions, and we are making a 360-degree rotation with this. Now, by comparison, the output shaft on the steering box that goes to the wheels is barely turning with that same 360 degrees, so you can see the reduction that's necessary to steer this machine. We're here again working on the grater with my son Mac, and our goal today is to get the undercarriage cut away from the chassis of the grater and get it pulled out. So we're starting by getting rid of the platforms to lighten it up and make room for the levers that need to come out with it. We've also got it supported with some scissor jacks. We're not sure if this is 100% going to work because there is no book on instructions on how to do this, so we're kind of making it up as we go along, but hopefully we have a plan, and hopefully it's going to work. Here we're cutting out the supports to hold the front part of the frame to the grater. So Matt got one of the nuts turning. Since the pins can't be removed to separate the two, we're having to cut the bolt heads from the bracket to remove the crawler. The reason we're having to do it this way is because the tracks are locked up. So we have to drag it out, but we also have to be careful because of the pins, making sure they don't snag on anything and dropping it to the ground. Good? Good? A couple of times we had to unhook the chain from the right side and pull only on the left because it was trying to come out crooked, and we didn't want it to knock the machine off the jacks. Got the undercarriage of the crawler pulled out of the grader. So now what we're doing is we have our pins that we're driving out. Now, Mac was able to get this pin out pretty easily, but it took the bushing with it. And we can get all that cleaned up and redo it with no problem. But this one, not only is it giving us a lot more trouble, the bushing is staying and the pin is coming out, which is what's supposed to happen. But the pin is getting mushroomed from hitting it so much with a 20-pound sledgehammer. So I'm going to have to take the torch and cut a chamfer back where it mushroomed a little bit to try to get it out the rest of the way. The reality is we're probably going to remake this pin anyway, but we can't do anything until we get it out. We were finally able to get this pin knocked out, but not before cutting the end of it where it had mushroomed slightly. So that's the pin, and the bushing is still intact in the housing. This one is the pin still in the bushing as part of the bracket. So we're going to have to knock that one out too, but we'll do that another day. So at least we'll be able now to get new pins and get all this back together with the crawler. But what we had to do here is what I want to show you, is we had so much difficulty holding it to try to knock that pin out. We took a floor jack to support a pipe that we extended through the one we were pushing out and through the one we already had taken out to here, where I was hitting on it with a sledgehammer, and you can see the amount of force we were putting on it and what it did to that pipe. So now it's all apart, so we can get busy with the other crawler and getting ready to get it mounted into the grader. There's the spacer out. It took quite a bit of work to remove it, but we got it off that shaft. And now I need to get that plate off. But what I really want to show you is that letter Y down there, little plastic piece, fell out as I was hammering on the plate. And I don't know how many years or decades that thing had been in there, but what is more interesting to me is that many times I've been working on this crawler and the grader, I've asked myself, why am I doing this? And coincidentally, the letter Y fell out of the grader. So I think I'm going to make a necklace out of that, or have it put onto the grader somewhere, so I can remind myself of how much work and effort went into this thing. I'm resorting to using tree wedges to get that plate pulled away. So I've got two big wedges there I knocked in with a sledgehammer. You can see there's a little bit of gap there, but it's beginning to come off of the studs that I cut there and there, and then pull it off of the shaft there. So I don't think you'll see that on the Discovery Channel. Well, there it is. It's finally off and ready to go into the other crawler. I might need those blocks right there, but those should be pretty easy to get off if I do. Now all I'll have to do is the other side. The first outer piece we moved, the bushing came with it, so I now have to separate the pin from the bushing. So I've got a bearing separator set up here, and I'm going to put a little bit of pressure with my press. I already know that it won't press out cold because I've already tried that and I don't want to do any damage to anything. So what I'm going to do is keep pressure on it, then I'm going to put heat around the bushing, and hopefully that should separate it, and we should hear it pop when it comes loose. It's starting to move. Let's keep the heat to it. Give it a little press. Looks like it's going to go. Still feels pretty smooth, so as long as I don't feel it binding where it's going to tear up the bushing, I can keep going through with it. Because the pin's going to be replaced anyway, it's the bushing we're trying to save. About to fall out, I think. Just like that. Now we'll take the pressure back off of it. Let the jack come up. And we're just going to leave it to cool off on its own. On this side, we're using the wedges again to pull this plate off, and we're just about there. There it goes. Alright. Now we should be able to walk that plate off of that shaft and then see what we're going to need to do to get it mounted to the other crawler. I've just learned that I need to cut the lower track support shafts out of this machine, as these shafts are longer than the ones that are on my other K20, and then I'm going to need them to mount the grader. So since there are no service manuals or a lot of people that you can talk to about doing this, I'm going to have to experiment on my own. The first thing that's going to happen is these tracks have to come off, and since it's been sitting for decades, all the pins are froze, so I am going to have to cut the tracks off. Once that's done, I'm going to flip the machine upside down so I can work on it a little bit easier, so I can learn from this machine so I don't mess up my good one. With the fenders out of the way, I can start cutting the tracks off, and since they don't move anymore, I am going to have to take them out in sections. Now we're ready to lift them off. So the goal was to turn this undercarriage completely upside down. I've got it jacked up with the rollback as far as I could, and I've got a chain, my Kubota hook to it. Let's see if we can get it back over the rest of the way. The whole reason for turning this upside down was to have easier access to these cap bolts that hold on those shafts. One of the bolts came out okay, the other three are rounded off, so I'm going to torch those because we don't need them. Pop those caps and then see what else we need to do to get the shaft out. I just got off the phone with Landis Zimmerman from Zimmerman Cletrac up in Pennsylvania, and he just informed me of something that's a little disturbing. We already knew the shaft was a little longer than the original one, but what's even more disturbing is apparently I may have the only one in existence. This machine was specifically built for that grader, so this shaft is extended just for that purpose, so mine definitely won't work. He doesn't have one. I have to get this one out without damaging it the best I can. Next time on Bulldog Builds, we're going to have that shaft out of the K20 undercarriage, hopefully without damaging it, knowing how rare that it is. And then we're going to see what's going to be necessary in order to remove the shaft from the good Cletrac that I have and put the side plates on to get this thing ready to put back into the Rome grader frame. See you next week.